For more reaction to the budget speech, we're now joined by political economist Dr. Lumkile Mondi. Good evening, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining us on the SABC. Let's start with just your reaction to the big talking point. That's the 0.5 percentage point increase in VAT.
It had to be done, given the shrinking economy. We know that the economy is much smaller than it was around 2011. We also know that the infrastructure in South Africa has contributed immensely to destroying a lot of businesses, small, medium enterprises, and even larger businesses who could not export and move their goods and services. Mm-hmm. So where do we get the revenue? We have to get it somewhere. And I think that should be done.
Mm-hmm. But we're hearing from political parties that this will disproportionately affect the poor, and essentially it's going to bring in 28 billion as opposed to that 60 billion that we were hearing of is the shortfall that needs to be addressed.
Unfortunately, the basket that's consumed, I'm talking about the food basket now in broader terms, the food basket consumed by the poor, most of which is related, I think it's the middle class that's what I'm worried about, because the middle class has been carrying the huge burden with the failing and falling infrastructure, that the discussion that we just had in Soshanguve with Mondi, it signifies that, the middle class is the one that's feeling the huge pinch and the burden. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the poor really don't come into the picture in relation to the basket. So it's the middle class that's going to be shrinking, given that it has to fund education, it's got to fund healthcare, it's got to fund everything which the state's supposed to provide, and has been dismal. Mm-hmm. So that's really what we're worried about the middle class, because the rich can look after themselves, the poor are well protected by government through various support measures which are in the budget, but the middle class is the one that's really carrying us through these difficult times. Mm-hmm. And so also cannot cope as we continue not providing services which the state is supposed to provide.
Mm-hmm. Now, Doctor, we'd want to delve deeper into the granular details of the budget speech, but politics has almost overshadowed this. I'm sure you just heard now with the president there. The big question now has become which parties will support the budget, because the main partner in the GNU, the Democratic Alliance, has already indicated that they will not support this budget. What do you make of just this development now, or the shift in focus from the granular details of the budget speech to perhaps who would support the speech?
Well, I mean, the GNU knows very well, and like many South Africans do know, that the ANC economic management has been very disastrous, given all the infrastructure failures that we've talked about. Secondly, there is really no strategy in dealing with the deep structural problems by the ANC. We all know that the capacity of the state was repurposed for what we called the 10 lost years, where capacity of the state was destroyed across many areas, including even the prosecution authority. So therefore, all these problems and difficulties, which were seen to be political, they're economic. And in that process, therefore, it's very, very difficult for us to envisage how the ANC can fix the mess that's created going forward. So the ANC has to appreciate that in a coalition, you don't have power and economic policy. You have to bargain, you have to win people over. And it's the nature of coalition politics that you're going to, from time to time, have these challenges of how we can proceed and make decisions to pass the budget so that the state departments can function.
But how much more could the ANC have done or said? Because you yourself are saying that 0.5 percentage increase was a necessary one.
The biggest thing they could have done, given that they've been allowed by their DA partner to make decisions in various areas, is to look at the state, at the wage bill. The wage bill is way too high for the poor services that we're getting. Many of us are self-provisioning because of that, but the people were employed by the state. So the restructuring of the state itself has not come to the picture, including also the parliament itself. 400 politicians are too many for a country like ours, and the perks that come with it. So we need really to look deeper. Perhaps one of the things that we need to learn is what the Americans are doing, a DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that we need to think about how can, in making the state capacity and making the state being capable, is also to cut the fat that we have because we need to address the taxpayers who are paying money, who are paying their taxes, and yet the service delivery is dismal.
Speaking of government efficiency, we heard today that SARS will be capacitated with 3.5 billion being allocated this year, an additional 4 billion next year. Talk to us about this.
This is phenomenal because then over 150,000 individuals and others, according to the SARS, are not yet paying or are paying less than they're supposed to pay. So through technology, I think we'll be able to deal with that. But the bigger picture really for South Africa is to move quicker on digitalization. We know that South Africa doesn't want to license Starlink, for example, which could enable many poor people to have access to digital footprint and digital information, develop other capabilities on their own from wherever they are. So it's all these other issues that are also need leadership, need decision-making, so that we empower South Africans to have access to digital information. And I think the fact that SARS is going to have that, we wish that South Africa could do more about also using the platform that's there, Starlink, to bring in more South Africans into the digital platforms, so that therefore we know exactly who is there, who's doing what, and through that digitalization process that's accessible to everyone, South Africa will be able to do that. So we remain to see how efficient that process by SARS will be, but the first way will be really making digital platforms much easier and accessible to everyone, so that then the SARS can then be able to really be more efficient in what it's trying to do.
Dr. Just in closing, on government debt, the minister stated that taking on additional debt to meet the spending pressures was not feasible. Debt, of course, is expected to be around 76.2% of GDP this financial year. Was this decision to not take on additional debt a good call?
Because the interest payments are enormous. Remember, the reason why we are in such a difficult position, it is because of the debt and service costs that relate to it. That money that's paying service interest and capital should be going towards expenditure, and you can't at the moment because of the debt. So therefore, we cannot be increasing more. The space is very, very limited. What we need to be doing is really, as I'm arguing here, is the restructuring of the whole state, making sure that the state is leaner, meaner, and more efficient by cutting costs, starting in Parliament, going to the state itself around the wage bill, and also even a local government level, because like in my city in Johannesburg, I know that I'm not getting services, but because most of the money is going towards the wage bill, and hence the roads, the water, electricity are not being maintained. So it is all those decisions which are political leadership to do so. And I think the government has let us down. They simply cannot take those hard decisions.
Doctor, thank you very much for your insights this evening. That was Dr. Lumkile Mondi. He's a political economist there reacting to the budget speech.